I'm on a box.
Media Mike is a technical writer for an online retail company. He is not a college graduate, nor is he an expert in anything, and any remarks, advice, or assertions should be treated as such. If you have a problem with the content of this video, that's on you, pal.
Dr. Ben Carson is in the news today, taking flack for the recent revelation that his research at Johns Hopkins Hospital involved the use of tissue that was collected from aborted fetuses, and as a result directly benefited from the same policies that he criticizes Planned Parenthood for. Now because of this, he's being called a hypocrite by the left-leaning media. But I say let's give old Benny a chance. Now as I see it, there are three possibilities for the explanation as to why he didn't come clean on this sooner. Number one, he didn't know about the fetal tissue. This scenario assumes that he was unaware of the use of, and at some point the sale of, aborted tissue in the lab that he sent his research to. I don't think that this scenario is very probable though, because he is a surgeon, which means at some point in his training he was familiarized with lab operations and probably interned at least one at some point. I mean, he'd have to be really, really stupid. So let's cross that one off. Number two, he knew about and approved of the use of the fetal tissue, but later had a change of heart. He was a doctor that used any means necessary to heal his patients, but eventually at some point he was awestruck by the miracle of life and decided that after that point he could no longer tolerate or participate in the use of fetal tissue. Now, given the length of his tenure, the amount of patients he treated, and his silence on the matter until after he retired from this position, I'm going to have to assume that he really didn't care until he was running for office. Which would be really slimy on his part, but even if it isn't genuine, it's easy enough to apologize for. Number three, he is an actual hypocrite. His research and his career directly benefited from the use of necrotic fetal tissue, and now that he's been caught, he's backpedaling, and using a form of the special exception fallacy. When I do it, it's okay. But let's give Mr. Carson a chance to defend himself in his own words.
And then, of course, last week they take the thing where, my name is on a research paper because as the surgeon, I take a specimen of abnormal tissue from the brain of a child, submit it to the pathologist, who then compare it with their tissue samples. And they have tissue samples from a one-day-old fertilized egg to people who are 120 years old. And they collect those things in archives, and they compare them. And that's how they make an assessment of where this tissue was likely to have come from. And they take that and they say, yep, Carson's doing abortions, and he's taking tissues from fetuses, and he's doing all these experiments on them. Again, total crap, okay? But
that's fair enough, Dr. Carson. So set us straight.
But their goal, of course, is to try to say that what Planned Parenthood did was okay because I'm doing it. And of course, what they depend on is people not being very informed and therefore being able to be easily manipulated. But I think the American people are going to get very smart, and they're going to stop listening to all these silly tales that the press is telling.
I'll save you the trouble of listening to the rest of his rambling, barely coherent, policy-free press conference. He says it's crap, but never says why it's crap. Instead, he says this.
Now, another area that I think is so important is being informed and being educated. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson especially emphasized this. Why were they so concerned about it? They said our system, our freedom, is dependent upon a well-informed populace. And if they ever become other than that, the nature of the country will change. And what did they mean by that? Well, if people are not well-informed, then they can be easily misled by slick politicians and dishonest media.
But never finishes addressing the issue. So that's it. Either he's a moron, a flip-flopping politician, or a full-on hypocrite. Well, at least he's a life-preserving doctor and a loving man of God, right?
Don't let them have anything that even appears like a victory and wipe them out. And you know what? I'm a peaceful person. I really am. But you know what? It doesn't make any sense to sit around and let somebody wipe you out. That makes no sense whatsoever, and we can do better than that. And in the long run, we actually will save more lives if we extinguish them earlier. The longer we wait, the more infiltrative and the larger they become, the more difficult it will become. And that's something that we should have learned from World War II. I don't know why we are allowing those lessons to escape us. We should know that.